Greetings, mutie lovers. This is Uncanny, the mutant musings of Matt and Siz. It's the show where we discuss Marvel's Uncanny X-Men comic issue by issue, from 1975's giant-size X-Men #1 all the way to the present day. My name is Matt. I write and draw Steamroller Man, which is a superhero comedy comic, and you can read that online for free at steamrollerman.com. And this is my co-host Siz, publisher, promoter, and founder of Comex Studios Australia. You can find everything Comex at comex.net.au. That's comex.net.au. Siz, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for asking. And yourself, Matt, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's
good.
It's been a crazy couple of weeks in LA where I am with the fires and everything, but
Yeah.
safe and sound and ready to talk about X-Men issue 97.
Awesome. I've got it on the screen. Yeah, I've got it on the screen. Well, what I'll do is, first of all, we forgot to do it in the last episode, but it's all very similar. We got Chris Claremont as the writer. This is the first one where there's no mention of someone helping him with the plot.
Yeah.
So this is all Chris.
Yep.
Dave Cockrum is the artist, of course. He has been on all the ones we've done. Sam Granger is the inker, and I'm pretty sure he has been for all the other ones we looked at.
Yeah,
but
so far.
The letters seem to keep swapping. Annette Kay does this one. Don Warfield does the coloring. That seems to swap between people. I've looked at our other issues.
Yep.
But Marv Wolfman has been the editor on all of them as well. So.
Right. That's true.
So I just thought I'd run through that because we forgot to last time. This issue is when we get to see Havok and Polaris again. So
that's right. Yeah, they haven't been in the action for a few issues since. I mean, it's basically since they left. Like the previous team, all except for Cyclops, decided we're done and we're leaving to do our own thing. And now it's sort of cool that the story is sort of revisiting them and kind of bringing them back in.
Yeah.
Which I kind of wondered whether that was now that Claremont is the sole writer on the title. To me, like, this was the first one since we've started doing this show where I was like, oh my God, this issue is awesome. You know, like I was fully on board with this, and I don't know whether it's just a coincidence that this is also Claremont's first full issue as sole writer, or whether it is a coincidence. But to me, like, I thought, wow, you can really feel the difference now that Claremont has fully taken over the title. Just in terms of the way the story feels, there's a lot more action in this, and also we'll talk about it a little bit later as we get into the issue, but the way that the action is paced, like the pacing of this issue, I thought was really well done. And anyway, so let's get into it. I think that Sam Granger's inks are really growing on me. This first page, like, what a fantastic splash page.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
This is the similar kind of thing to what I was talking about in the previous episode of the show, where we have one of these sort of like montage-y kind of collage type images from Dave Cockrum, where it's a bunch of different things just sort of placed very well composed in the panel, but they're not like physically all in the same, literal physical space. It's an abstract image of, in this case, it's Charles having a nightmare. And I just love these combination images that, it's this thing where a picture tells 1,000 words, It's communicating so much. It's an image of him remembering the past, because he's got on the left side of the frame, it's all his new students. But then on the right side of the panel, we've got these really cool spaceship designs, and they're very like insect like.
Yeah.
Which another thing I just wanted to say was, if we go to the next page, it's even more impressive. We've got this fantastic double page spread.
Yeah, it's awesome.
With this full on space battle. This is all Dave Cockrum designing these ships on, just for this comic. And this is 1976. So this is a year before Star Wars came out,
Oh, yeah.
So this kind of made me think, like, this sort of science fiction image had been unseen in movies at the time, back in those days. This really was the era where comic books could give you a much richer fantasy experience than either movies or TV could do, because the special effects kind of capabilities just weren't there at the time in those media. But with comics, you are partially stimulating the reader's imagination, but you're also, it goes back to that well-worn saying where they're like, oh, well, comics have an unlimited special effects budget, and this is clearly that.
Yes.
Writ large on this double page spread. I was so when I flipped the page to this, I was like, oh wow, this is a fantastic image. I just love it. So sorry, go ahead.
No. All I was going to say is, when I got to this page, I was kind of there's a little part of me that was sad.
Really?
In that, yeah, not because of this, but for the fact that this wasn't amazing to me. Because what is this? Because I know what it is. I know what happens. I know who these people are. I know what this is all about. Yes. And that kind of, I got that feeling of, wow, that would have been so cool to have been reading this as they came out and just go, wow, what's this?
Right.
And so the little part of me was like a little jealous, a little sad, that I went, this looks awesome, but I know what it is. I know who she is.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I get what you're saying.
I know these aren't nightmares.
Yes, I mean this. I don't know how much we want to get into spoilers, but obviously you and I both know where this is going to lead. And this is like the first seeds that are being planted for what becomes a major plot line in X-Men, Uncanny X-Men's continuity. It's very interesting to see it first being planted here. And again, like we were talking about on the previous episode, I do wonder whether, this is clearly something that Claremont has, he's got the plan in mind for, and the designs are being refined, I think, as we're going to see more and more of this stuff coming into the comic continuity. I think you'll see obviously the designs are going to be refined.
Of course.
It's interesting to see it here where you have these very insect-like spacecraft, which I thought was fantastic. Like, I mean, I don't think there's been anything like this in science fiction before this point, at least to my knowledge. And once again, anyone watching, if you can contradict me, please leave a comment, because I will freely admit I'm not an expert on science fiction history. But, to my knowledge, this is the first time I'd ever seen, the earliest example of like spaceships based on actual organic creatures, which is done a lot these days. But
it is.
Back then, I think it was all a bit more 2001: A Space Odyssey type realistic, could this actually be part of the US space program type stuff?
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting. And again, this is again another example of Claremont's subplot, laying the groundwork for these subplots that are going to weave through, and he'll probably like revisit this a little bit more each successive issue until we finally get, oh, this is what that's all about in issues to come. So yeah, and also one last thing I'll say about this technique of doing a splash page for the page one and then flipping over to a double page splash. Jack Kirby used to do that all the time, especially in his 1970s comic work for both Marvel and DC. It sort of became a staple, and I associate it most closely with him out of any artist. So I do wonder whether this is sort of Dave Cockrum being influenced by Jack Kirby, and that's not anything to be ashamed of, because I don't think there's anyone working in comics then or since who wasn't influenced or isn't influenced by Jack Kirby. So yeah, I just wanted to make note of that. So let's continue going through.
Yeah, well, I love the bug design for the planes and also for the person in the suit.
Yeah, that helmet looks awesome.
Steers you right off on what they look like.
Yes.
So it's an even bigger reveal when you end up finding out, which won't be in this issue, but yeah.
True.
Yes. I just love that he thinks he's going crazy and he's a telepath, and he's not. He doesn't consider that he's having messages sent to him. He's just like, I'm going crazy.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I'm the world's most powerful telepath.
Yeah.
I'm going crazy because I'm having these weird dreams.
Yeah, I never thought of that. You're right.
So Moira, that amused me. I was also jealous he had donuts. So,
yes,
if that's what those are, I just assume they're donuts.
They could be bagels.
They could be bagels. So I'm not jealous
it might be
anymore.
Bagels. But yeah, interesting that Moira's come and sort of made him some coffee and stuff. We see here Chris Claremont always would write accents of characters who had accents, and obviously, like, because you got a multinational team with this team of X-Men, almost all of them are speaking with an accent. And that was one thing that I always associate with Chris Claremont's writing, was he would sort of phonetically write the accents. And he was actually pretty good at it. So
I would hear it in my head.
Yeah, exactly. It's a help. It helps you actually hear the dialogue and how it should sound in your head, which is especially useful for kids reading the story, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And we've got a sort of a hint that Moira and Professor X have a bit of a history.
Right.
Down at the last panel there. They're sort of like, oh, no, silly, that's what friends are for. And it's highlighted that they're friends. Mm-hmm. I found that interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
They're trying to say they weren't just friends at one stage.
Right. Might be bad news for Banshee, who's looking to get with Moira.
Mrs.
Might be out of luck.
Come on, mate. Come on. So what do we got next? We've got and this is where we find out what's happened to Lorna and Alex.
Yeah, so
in the middle of a desert or something. I don't know what's going on here.
It looks like they're in the desert somewhere. Who knows where? It just mentions they're high over the Rio Diablo, which I guess is a mountain range. I don't know exactly where that is.
No, neither do I.
But I'm gonna Google it to see whether it's actually a real place right now.
Cool.
Rio Diablo.
And I shall chat. I love this one because there's no real explanation of why Alex needs to leave.
Right.
what he's going out for in the desert. But
Hmm.
I couldn't help but read Lorna's line, "I feel like a woman," and that song came into my head. I'm like, damn it.
That was a really weird. I thought that was a really weird line, especially for a male writer to write.
Yeah.
I feel like a real woman. It's just like, that sounds weird, but I guess
It
for
did,
the
didn't it? And I
70s,
think that's why the
maybe.
song popped into my head to
Yeah,
explain
yeah,
that.
the Shania Twain song.
Yeah, that's the one. I was forgetting the
Yes.
name.
One other thing about this page, I did not know that Polaris and Havok were both studying to get their doctorate degrees, because it mentions like they're both doctoral candidates, and I'm assuming they're studying like archaeology or something. I mean, I just assumed since they're in the desert, so are they both going for like doctorates in archaeology or something? I just thought that was interesting, and it made me wonder, like,
I
did
skipped
they
over
ever
that
get to?
word.
What's that?
I skipped over that word. I didn't even.
Oh,
It didn't even register the doctor.
well, I'm sure you were. I'm sure it's meant to just be like background kind of filler detail, but it was
No, but I love
something
that
that,
explains why they're there. So yeah.
yeah, I kind of like keyed on that, and it made me start wondering, like, well, did they ever get to finish their studies and get their doctorates? So are Havok and Lorna Dane now, like, are they doctors of something? Who knows? And that made me
Hmm.
wonder, like, who are the highest educated X-Men? So we've got Professor X, so he's obviously like achieved a professorship of something, although we
Of
never know
something.
what he's a professor of.
Could be
Um,
everything.
can
It's
you
the
think of
greatest
any
minds.
other X-Men characters besides? I mean, Hank McCoy is always sort of talked about as like, oh, he's this scientific genius, but did he ever actually get like? Oh, he is
I think
called Dr. Hank
yeah,
McCoy,
yeah,
actually.
Hank, yeah, he is called Doctor. So he's done his studies somewhere in
Yeah,
between fighting evil. He got chance to do his studies,
right.
so that's interesting.
Yeah. So that's just something I wondered, like, how many learned X-Men are there?
Yeah, I never
I
thought of
don't
that
know.
before.
Yeah.
They're trying to
Um,
promote education. I love it. Um,
exactly. Exactly. Stay in
I'm
school,
curious about
kids.
this. The shadow in the last panel. Did you
Yeah.
know straight away who that was?
I did not.
I
This
did.
You
It was
did.
no surprise when he appears because I know that costume.
Oh,
So,
really? See, this was all news to me.
oh, okay.
Um, I remember when the costume is revealed. It did sort of seem familiar, but I wasn't
Oh, yeah.
immediately like, oh, it's Eric the Red.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
when he named himself, I was like, who? Who's
Yeah.
that?
Okay. Well, I don't know this version of him. Um, Funnily enough, I know the version where Scott was him.
Really? Right? Yeah, they
Which
reference that in
which
this
is
in this
earlier
issue.
because even though I didn't read the comic, I've read the articles and stuff about when it happened. So that's why it's
Okay.
familiar to me. I've never read a comic with him in it. This is the first time, but I've read articles and stuff about him because I'm a bit of a X-Men geek. So that's what I
Yeah.
do in my spare time. Um, so
So
as we go,
educate me, like, who is Eric the Red, and why was, like, what's the deal with,
well,
why
this
was
version that's
Cyclops
what I'm curious about.
pretending?
I want to see what happens next. I
Right. Okay. All
want
right.
to know who
Let's
this
keep
dude
going
is
then. Let's keep
because
going.
I love the I love when he's introduced because yeah, once they show the red leg here in
Hmm.
panel 5, then I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's definitely him. It's definitely him. I'm definitely
Mm.
sure it's him. I don't remember him having the ability to control other people, but it's definitely him. Um, so he zaps
So, when you were
Polaris.
reading this issue, were you thinking this was going to be Cyclops again in
No,
some
no,
sort
because
of evil thing?
no, because I did in the article they talk about how someone else had played him. Because I didn't know who that person was, I sort of ignored it. And I was just read about the part where he was Cyclops.
Interesting.
Because I used to love Cyclops. I still do.
Right.
I think it's more of the brother thing between him and Alex.
Right.
Reminded me of the relationship between myself and my brother.
That's nice.
And funnily enough, my brother loves Havok. So,
oh, really? That's cool.
So it always has that, sentimental type thing going on.
Yeah.
I've never really mentioned that to anyone before, so here it is live.
Yeah, that's cool.
But
I like it.
Yeah, so I used to be very interested in whatever Cyclops was up to.
Yeah.
I do find it funny that he stayed behind when he was in love with Jean Grey, but I still like the character.
Right.
A lot of people.
Well, a lot happens on this page. You've got Lorna is possessed, seemingly possessed by this mystery villain. She gets a new costume.
Yeah, as you do.
And Havok gets she blasts Havok, knocks him out. And meanwhile, Charles is off on his vacation that he announced last issue. He's off to the airport to go on a well-earned vacation, it says.
Well-earned, yes.
And interestingly enough, Jean Grey is back. Now, didn't she leave? Wasn't she?
Yeah, so she's back just to say goodbye.
Yeah, so that's why this was one thing that made me wonder. Claremont's now taken over full writing duties, and so it made me wonder, now that he's got full control of the book, he was like, no, I'm going to bring Jean Grey back because I like that character. So, yeah, that was just something that I wonder if Len Wein had sort of had the idea to just everybody except Cyclops leaves. But now, in the course of this one issue where he's now got full control, Havok's back, Polaris is back, Jean Grey is back. Interesting.
Yeah, true.
Interesting.
I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's just conjecture on my part. But it's interesting the timing of it, I thought. One other thing on this page is Nightcrawler is using the image inducer to mask his appearance, but there's absolutely no explanation of how that works or why he's doing it, which I know there is in later issues. So it's interesting that it's introduced here but not explained at all. It's just like, oh yeah, Nightcrawler just looks different. He's out in public, and so he's just changed his appearance. So to me, that would be sort of confusing for a kid reading it at this point, especially since Nightcrawler is new. He's a new character that's only been in the X-Men. So it's not like it's a reference to something he's already had in another comic. I just thought that was a bit weird. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, he does say it's Tony Stark's image inducer.
Right.
And I wondered, why did Tony Stark need one of those?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Same
I think
thing.
it ends up being
nothing is explained.
Reed Richards at some stage in the comics.
Right.
Ends up being his. And I think later in the comics, it ends up being made by themselves, like Forge or Beast makes them.
Yeah.
But I found this interesting that it was Tony Stark. So maybe Iron Man was more popular back then.
So at the end of this page, Havok shows up in full costume. And so Cyclops knows uh-oh, something's up. What are you guys doing here? And the battle begins as Polaris, also in her new costume, blasts Jean Grey with a magnetic force blast or something.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
And then the action, we are off to the races in terms of the action. Oh my God, this is this is where I was like, oh, I love this. I love this issue. Things
Yes.
get so crazy in this issue. It's fantastic. This page, I just love how much is happening on it.
Mm-hmm.
The action on the page and the pacing, like I was saying earlier, the pacing of the action is so fast on this page. It's awesome. It's
Yep.
so exciting. And the fight begins. The pilot's in the plane. So this is the plane that Charles Xavier is on. Like, he's on this plane about to fly off for his vacation, and Polaris and Havok arrive because their mission, as they're mind controlled by Eric the Red, who
Mm-hmm.
we'll later see in full
Yep.
in a
Be
few
revealed. Yep.
pages. But their mission is they want to kill Charles. And so they're blowing apart planes all on the tarmac. The
Yeah.
pilots decide, let's get out of here. And they start taxiing away. There's a great panel where Cyclops, not Cyclops, now I'm still doing it. It's Colossus.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. I
It's not
started
your
it.
fault. I think it's an easy mistake to make. Colossus and Nightcrawler both transform at the same
Oh,
time, which
yeah, I
is
like
cool.
that bit.
So yeah, awesome page. And then we go on to the next page, which the action ramps up again. Havok shoots Professor X's plane, or he lines up to take a shot with his force blast or whatever. Havok, I can't remember what's Havok's kind of
His is,
power?
I don't know what it is here because I know these things change all the time. But his is back in the Outback X-Men days.
Yeah.
It was just raw energy. Like,
oh, okay,
I remember him like shooting things and just obliterating them.
right.
And him saying something along the lines of, "Well, that's all I can do. That's all I can do with this power is just obliterate."
Destroy.
Like he there's just bones left of one of the characters that he ends up blasting in one of the ones I've seen.
Oh,
and
wow.
he goes, "Well, I can't do any less. That's my power."
Interesting.
Yeah,
so he's a dangerous dude.
Yeah, very dangerous dude.
And yeah, case in point, on this page, he's about to blast Professor X's plane. Nightcrawler tackles him from behind, so the blast goes off in a different direction, but it hits another plane, like it hits a jumbo jet. As Xavier's plane takes off. Which, what a fantastic panel at the bottom of the page, but also, like, what a great page turn moment. Because as I was reading, I was like, oh, so Nightcrawler just caused Havok to destroy a plane full of people.
Yeah, that's what I thought at first.
That's why I was like, this issue is so intense. Like, the action is so well done and so intense. Then when you turn the page, you realize, oh, thank God, the narration says, like, oh, this plane was just there for maintenance. So it wasn't a full plane. It was actually empty, but it's still, like, incredibly, like, impressive destruction. And the thing about the pacing is that, which I think is really masterfully done in this issue, is you have an action moment, but then it always gives you a moment where the characters react to what just happened. It's not just action, action, action. It's action and then reaction, and then another moment of action, and then the characters react again. And so by showing us that the characters care about what happened, I think it makes us care about what happened, and it makes the gravity of the situation really hit home to the reader, which I think it's just so well done. And I don't think it's done as well as often in modern comics. Like, I think a lot of the time you don't see that. Modern comics are a lot of talking and often like very little action, or it's just action, but there's not that breathing room of the characters react and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe we just survived that. And then, like, oh, well, it was probably, that was pretty momentous kind of thing that they just went through. So
made them stop.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, so here we are. This is the villain, Eric the Red.
I love this line by Cyclops. I giggled. Even though I know how it all worked, it still made me giggle. But you can't be Eric the Red. I was Eric the Red.
You can't be Eric the Red. I was Eric the Red. That's awesome.
Oh, sorry.
So, and then they try and attack Eric the Red, but and it does have one of those editor notes down the bottom where it says, anyone remember Sykes' epic portrayal from X-Men numbers 51 and 52? So that's a good,
read them now.
Yeah, that's a good 4 or 5 years back in X-Men continuity from this point, I guess. Because we're now up to issue 97. So that's a good 45 issues, possibly even longer if they're not going monthly. Because I think at this point they still are bi-monthly.
Yeah, they are. They are.
Yeah, so
they don't go monthly until it's officially Uncanny X-Men.
Oh, okay, all right. I think you told me that before.
Yeah, I looked it up, so that's the only reason I know.
Yeah. So the villain reveals himself, Eric the Red. I don't know who Eric the Red is. Even Scott doesn't know. And Scott was Eric the Red. So who Eric the Red actually turns out to be. So my guess, and I haven't read future issues, my guess is that Eric the Red is going to turn out to be Magneto.
Oh,
but I don't know.
That could be the answer, because I do know that at one time, I don't know if this is the time, but at one time it was Magneto.
Oh, well, there you go.
So well done. Good guess.
The only reason I kind of thought that was because at a certain point in this issue, he refers to Polaris as child. And I didn't know whether, because knowing that Polaris is Magneto's daughter, I was like, is that literally he's calling her his child, or is it just like a figure of speech and he would just call anybody that? I don't know. But that's what made me think, I wonder if that's Magneto in disguise, and there's going to be a big reveal coming up.
Because I'm curious, there's a bit where I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think near the end he refers to Havok and Polaris as children, his children.
Ah, interesting.
I think. I'm not 100% sure. But this, I love this. Jean is doing what Jean does best, passing out.
Isn't there a internet thing about the X-Men cartoon?
Yeah,
where she's always
worse. The cartoon's so bad. She passes out continuously or gets knocked out or whatever because she's so powerful. It's like, crap, what do we do? If she's there, she can solve the problem. Oh, no, we'll make her pass out.
Well, I wrote down that at this point, I think she hasn't become the Phoenix yet. So at this point, she's sort of a low-level telekinetic, but I don't think she has real strong psychic powers. I think she's mainly telekinetic, can just move stuff around with her mind.
Yeah.
And so, that was one thing that I wrote down. Storm thinks quickly and flies off with Jean, getting her out of harm's way. Storm thinks that neither Havok nor Polaris can fly, but Polaris actually does take off using, it says in the script, she's saying she negates the, quote, gravimetric lines of force, which that sounds really awesome, but I didn't know whether that was techno babble or whether that's actually a real thing in physics, because I'm not a
Well, it's what she
scientist.
did
And I
on
was,
Crocea. So
huh?
it's what she did to the island, the living
Oh, you're
island.
right. That's right. She did.
She
That's
made it
right.
fly out to space.
Yeah, you're right. She did exactly the same thing. So, hang on a sec.
Sorry, I
Phone's
still
ringing.
find that so amusing when she does that. She gets powered up by Storm and Havok. I'm like, wouldn't that just kill her?
Say that part again.
Polaris, where she gets boosts the living island off into space.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, she's powered up by Storm and Havok, and I'm like, if they both hit her, wouldn't she just die, not be powered up?
Right.
I mean, does she absorbs energy now? When did that happen?
I don't know.
We're going back a few issues though. We'll get back to this one.
Maybe it's just one of those it's comics things.
Yeah, it's a comics thing.
So then Polaris zaps Storm. One thing I thought was like, so Polaris takes off and zaps Storm, but she probably could have just zapped Storm from the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Storm drops Jean, which ends the page in another dramatic moment. Like, oh no, she's
nice
falling to her
page turn.
death. Got to grab her.
Just
Page
in time.
turn. She grabs her, and this is where I was saying in the last episode, referring to this moment where Storm kind of zaps herself with electricity to magically change her costume, which this is clearly like it's comics moment, which is very cool.
It's very cool.
But it's also a very sort of, 70s, 80s kind of moment where you're not supposed to think too hard about, well, how did this happen? It just happens because it's cool. Which
She's
it is.
like Marvel's Wonder Woman. Instead of spinning,
Yeah, exactly.
she shoots herself with lightning.
Exactly.
Now,
and
I was wondering in this,
mhm.
is Havok so mad because he didn't get a new costume as well? Is that why he's so upset? Because Polaris got a new costume, and I'm sorry if people love that costume. I'm sorry, but it's hideous. And poor old Havok's like, "Where's my hideous costume? I want to match my girlfriend." So I don't know.
Well,
another thing
in any
here
case,
I noted this because I know about these two fighting. I don't know if Chris made it a thing yet.
but
like
you mean like the rivalry between them?
Yeah, well, also the whole when they fight, they don't once hit each other; they hit other things.
Oh, that's a good point.
And
I never even noticed that, but you're
I went
right.
through the pages and checked. So I'm curious if the next issue they're going to reveal what is now canon, that both of them can absorb the other one's power.
That's interesting.
As in, if you hit Havok with Cyclops' eye beams, they just absorb into him.
Oh, wow.
And vice versa,
I didn't know that.
If Havok shoots his stuff at Cyclops, he just absorbs the energy into him.
Really? I didn't know that was the thing.
I'm pretty sure that's a thing. Either that or I'm talking total crap.
Well, as I've said, like, I'm not an authority, but that's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah,
that's
cool. Because their powers are both based on the sun. So.
Right. And they are kind of similar. When you were explaining Havok's powers earlier, I did think, so it's kind of like Cyclops' powers, which is also like a concussive blast that just sort of obliterates stuff. But rather than coming from his eyes, Havok's kind of projects out from just inside his chest sort of thing. That's the way it's usually drawn.
Yeah, because I'm not an expert on Havok, because I am a bit lost with some of the things that happen in the comics, because I got a lot of my comics from secondhand bookstores. So there was huge gaps in my collection to start with.
Right.
So I'd read one about Havok and another thing about Havok, and it's like, what happened in between? Because there's a time that Havok's got a special costume or something that regulates his powers, or else he just goes like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, nuclear.
Yes. Yes.
So his powers sound weird, like uncontrollable. But I mean, they did the same thing with Iceman at one stage, where his powers became uncontrollable and he had to wear that special belt.
Right. Interesting.
Because he's considered an Omega these days.
Havok.
No, Iceman.
Iceman, really?
Yeah, I was really surprised when I read that. I don't know if it's a true canon thing or just the person writing the article. So
interesting.
I won't put it out there as a definite thing.
That's interesting. So more great fight scene action on this page. So Havok on the previous page, Havok has basically collapsed a wall onto Cyclops, which kind of breaks him out, like the shock of like, oh, I think I might have just killed my older brother. Sort of breaks the mind control, which is kind of interesting because it sort of suggests that the mind control is not that strong on either Polaris or Havok. And then Eric the Red, he hurls Nightcrawler like he's okay. So this is pretty cool. Nightcrawler is on Eric the Red's shoulders, trying to, I guess, pull his helmet off or something. But then Eric the Red grabs him and throws him at Colossus.
Yep.
And now this part's interesting because Nightcrawler teleports before the impact.
Yep.
Which he said 2 issues ago he couldn't do because of the law of conservation of energy.
Yeah. Chris decided to ignore it. It's all his now. It doesn't have to ignore the old guy's rules.
Yeah, exactly. So this is why, in my opinion, you should never explain too clearly how your character's powers work too soon when you're writing a comic, because you're going to paint yourself into a corner if you set it all up ahead of time. Like that's with Steamroller Man. Like I don't want to explain how his powers actually work, and people have asked me, like when they're reading online, they're like, "Oh, but how does this Steamroller Man power work?" And I'm like, "Look, it just works how it works. Like if you just read the comic." And the way it's working in the comic, that's how it works.
I like it.
Because I don't want to have all these like rules hanging over my head, because it just makes it harder to write stories and put the characters in situations going forward when you've got to kind of navigate all these like, oh, we can't do that because that doesn't make sense for how his power works. So yeah, it's interesting. That's just occurred to me as a creator of a comic.
Well, I would definitely back you up on that one, because when I turned the page and saw that he just sitting there when he teleported, the first thing I thought was, hang on, a few comics ago, he couldn't do that. So yeah, just like you said, it's the first thing that popped in my head. But those first 2 panels, are like, oh, this would so be when someone falls in love with Nightcrawler.
Yeah, it's cool.
They're just awesome, aren't they? They're just so cool. I read that, I was like, yeah, Nightcrawler. So
Well, I mean, I actually prefer this version of how his powers work, that he can teleport in midair. Like that's much cooler, and it gives him more ability to do more cool stuff.
Yeah.
If his powers aren't constrained by, the laws of physics. I like this much better. And again, like fantastic action page here where Eric the Red throws Colossus into the wheel of another jet, causing, the wheel just gets sheared off, the wing breaks, and the whole plane kind of lopsidedly falls onto the ground. This is great. Like this whole fight scene, I love it. It's a great like setting for a fight scene where you've got superpowered characters like throwing each other into jets.
Yeah.
So cool. So cool. I love it. This battle is just so awesome. And then this page,
I love this.
page 15, I think this is. This is what I was talking about with the pacing. Like you have that moment at the beginning of the page where Nightcrawler is like, "Oh my god, what just happened?" So you have a moment of action, but then you have a moment where we can absorb what just happened, and the characters are like they're worried about each other. You know, they're like, "Oh my god, I did it again. Not Cyclops, Colossus." Oh my god, Colossus!
Poison your mind.
It gives each hit and each blow has more emotional and dramatic weight that way, because we can see that when the characters care about each other, then we care about what happens to those characters as well, which I think it's just so well done. This issue is so great, and I had so much fun reading this. Then the awesome action continues. Cyclops. Oh god damn. Colossus. Colossus throws the wheel back into Eric the Red, and then meanwhile,
I love that bit.
Bottom of the page, Storm and Polaris are facing off with their, it's magnetic force versus electricity, and it seems to be like a stalemate. Like they're canceling each other's powers out at this point.
I love this bit where Storm's like, "A game?"
Yeah. And then she just lays it on.
Yeah.
And pours on the juice and overcomes Polaris, knocks her out of the sky. And then, so the funny thing is, Havok at the bottom of the page sees this, but rather than attacking Storm, the one who did it, he's like, "I'm going to kill you, Cyclops." It's like, it wasn't Cyclops, dude.
I didn't notice this scene. He does hit him.
Yeah.
Oh. Maybe they haven't decided on that piece of canon yet.
Maybe not. That definitely sounds like a more recent thing to me.
Yeah, it might be.
So
80s is what I mostly read.
Right.
I would have got that from. And the 90s. So those 2 decades would have been where I would have got that information from.
Yeah. So it seems like there's definitely some family baggage between the two Summers brothers here. Because it's like, or maybe Havok just doesn't want to attack a woman. And so he just attacks Cyclops.
He goes after his brother.
Exactly. So then on page 17, Havok runs over to see if Polaris is okay, and then, it's a little bit too little, too late. Wolverine and Banshee arrive in some kind of space age flying car.
Is that like it looks like the Fantastic Four-mobile.
Yes, I thought the same thing. It looks like the Fantastic car, and I was like, where'd they get that? Is that also on loan from Reed Richards? Because, obviously...
Did they paint over the 4 and put an X?
Yeah, exactly. We've established that Reed Richards and Professor X have this kind of cozy relationship where they sort of help each other out from time to time. But yeah, they sort of arrive right at the end of the battle. And the interesting thing was that Eric the Red didn't seem to be having any problem besting the X-Men. Like he threw Colossus into the plane wheel. He threw Nightcrawler into Colossus. Like he didn't really seem to be troubled by any of the X-Men. But now Banshee and Wolverine show up, and he's like, "Oh no, reinforcements! Let's go! Let's get out of here!
Let's get out of here!"
So he grabs Havok and he grabs Polaris, and then he takes off into the sky so he can fly, which we know that Magneto can do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another thing where I was like, I
Yeah,
think
I
this
know it
might
is
be
Magneto at
Magneto.
one stage. I just don't know if it's this one.
Right. We'll find out.
But it would make sense because he's covered in metal, so he could be
Right.
enhancing his strength, physical strength, through magnetic powers in the metal. Like
Oh,
it could
that's
have been,
actually really cool. I love that
yeah.
idea.
So that would kind of make sense that it's Magneto,
Yeah.
and but just it doesn't make sense why those two and what's his end game. Um, was he trying to kill Professor? Or was he trying to kidnap him? That's what I wasn't sure of. Um,
Right.
they said we're after Professor X, but why?
I think they were
Havoc.
trying to kill
You
him.
think Havoc was wanting to kill him because that's just
Yeah.
Havoc's powers, but was he just going to take a wing out or something? I don't know.
No, I think they were trying to kill him.
They were trying to kill him. Oh, that sounds very
I think it
Magneto-y.
says that at the beginning of
Oh,
the issue. I think it says like, I'm tasking you with destroying Charles Xavier or something like that. So
oh. See, I'm horrible memory. I don't remember everything I read.
yeah, I've got everything written down in front of me for these shows, so it's not like
I've
I'm
got
like
certain
operating
things.
on like mega mind level memory powers at all. Right at the end of this page, it's a really nice 6-panel layout too. I like this kind of, it's a nicely laid out, just very straightforward, traditional
Yeah.
layout. But Cyclops is like he's about to blast them with his optic blast to knock them out of the sky, but he has a moment where he hesitates because he's like, "Oh, but I might kill Havok and Lorna because they're both knocked out. They might crash to the ground and die." And then Wolverine has no pity. He's like, "What are you doing?
Yeah, I
Kill
love
them!
that.
They're getting away." And then on the next page, Cyclops backhands him.
Yeah, so that was like, whoa, this is where their relationship started.
Yes, exactly. So this is a prickly relationship that seems to sort of start right here, that has since become, part of the X-Men thing, X-Men
Mm.
mythos.
Yeah, and the whole Storm stopping him and him going
Right,
listening to her. So that's like, oh, that's pretty cool.
exactly. And then the final panel, I thought this image is fascinating because
Yeah, I
it's
love it.
got Stephen Lang, who we first saw in the previous issue, who's got the Sentinel program up and running again. So he's got plans to destroy the X-Men. And we see that he is watching the X-Men's battle. He's been watching this the whole time on his, monitor. But then we see that someone is also watching him watching the
Yes.
X-Men.
Yeah, I
And
love
we
that.
are watching that person watch that, So it's like this, this infinite mirror kind of thing.
Does this let me zoom
Now,
in? Oh, it does too. Does anyone in the comments please tell me if you know that costume? See if you can beat us reading the next one.
yeah, that
'Cause
was
I
one
did not
thing
know
where
that glove. I did not
me
know that
neither,
glove.
me neither. So I thought that this final panel, great visual metaphor
Yeah.
for Claremont's layered subplots that we've been talking about, where it's like
Mm.
it's a plot within a plot within a plot.
The plot.
And this panel is a metaphor for that. Is like there's always a bigger picture going on in the X-Men that will eventually kind of come to light if you just read it long enough. So yeah, it's interesting
Mm.
way to end it.
I like that.
So that's all I had. That's all the
Yeah,
thoughts I had on this one.
yeah. Similar. I got nothing else to say. I think I've laughed at everything I was going to laugh at. Uh, oh, the one thing I do find fascinating about this, where he gets punched by
Mm-hmm.
Cyclops. There's a close up of his hand,
Yeah.
and little bits of the claws are sticking out.
Right.
Which I've always been fascinated with his claws, and it's like, okay, they go up his forearm,
Yep.
which means when they're up there, he can move his hand around. Like he can move his hand around, but as soon as they go up here, he's got to have it straight for them to come out, or else they come out his palm or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
And then once they're all the way out, he can move his hand again.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hang on, they're halfway out.
Right.
How's he moving his hand? But I mean, his stuff's been retroed so many times, it's not funny. Yeah. I remember an X-Men comic where they show you the springs and mechanics that were holding them in.
Yeah.
And then a couple of issues later, well, not a couple of issues, quite a few issues later, bone claws. And they were always part of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it's like, well, this issue makes no sense now. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But,
well, I think even at this point, you'd never seen Wolverine out of costume yet.
Oh, that's
and
true.
I think at this point, a lot of people assumed that the claws were actually in his gloves. They weren't in his arms. Oh. So when we read the next, because I've already read the next issue.
Oh, you cheater.
I just had some downtime yesterday, and so I thought, I'll just get caught up for the next episode.
I like it.
But in the next issue, we see him pop the claws without his costume, and one of the characters actually remarks like, "Oh, the claws are actually part of your body. I thought they were in your gloves." So that's interesting. That it's another thing that I think Claremont is sort of bringing to the comic. He's really sort of starting to flesh things out in terms of these characters and their whole deal. So, again, like foreshadowing future episodes of our show, we're going to see all this kind of come to life before our eyes and watch it kind of develop issue by issue, which will be really interesting to talk about, I think.
Well, that brings us to the end. So, Matt, what's the band name for this one?
Okay. I'm going to let you choose. I have two possibilities.
Oh, you've got two. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So on page 5, we have one of the characters, I can't remember who, says some kind of paradise. I think it's when we see Havok and Lorna. And they talk about, kind of paradise is one option.
Nice.
And then on the next page, page 6, we have the power of death.
I found that so amusing when she said that. But I love it. Power of death. Oh, so I've got to choose, do I? Kind of paradise. I don't know, I'm going for the metal, so I'm going to go power of death.
All right. So that's
my choice.
That's this episode's band name. The Power of Death.
Power of Death.
Nice.
That's 2 in a row that have been heavy metal.
Yes.
Or at least assume that it's heavy metal,
Right.
It could be a pop band called Power of Death. It'd be strange, but So, thanks for watching, everyone. That's it for this week. If you have anything you want to add about what we've talked about, if you agree with our opinions, if you think they're completely wrong, whichever, let us know in the comments. And remember to like and subscribe to the channel. And for more uncanny conversations like this one, remember to tune in next time. And when we discuss number 98. So, issue 98, I should say, not number 98. So until then, I'm Siz, and you can find me online at comex.net.au. That's COMX. And Matt, where can we find your stuff online?
Find all my stuff at steamrollerman.com or linktree/steamrollerman.
Oh, nice. So that's awesome. See you next episode, everyone. Have a good one.
I'll see you next time, Siz, for more X-Men talk. More mutant musings.
Yes, nice.